It's been a dark January so far, with no sign of load shedding being suspended anytime soon. With its summer maintenance program underway, as well as continuous breakdowns, Eskom has been relying on its emergency diesel-powered open-cycle gas turbines to prevent a total collapse of the grid. But the reserves have fast been depleting, and the utility has no money left for diesel. The new budget only kicks in April, and Eskom has requested 19.5 billion rand lifeline from Treasury. Government says it can't cough up that amount of cash. But what about the growing cost to the economy? The rolling blackouts continue to take. Let's discuss this further with Hugo Pienaar from the Bureau for Economic Research. Mr. Pienaar, thank you so much for your time this evening. So the argument very essentially boils down to a relatively simple sum. Eskom is not using its open-cycle gas turbines because they've exhausted their budget for diesel. Treasury refuses to give them more money for this purpose. But in the meantime, the resulting high stages of load shedding cost the country far more than it would cost just to give Eskom the money for diesel. Is that roughly the sum of it?
I think so. I mean, perhaps to start, one should say that, one understands the Treasury's position to a large extent. I mean, the budget is a long process to approve the main government budget. That process has already been done for the 2022-23 fiscal year, so the current fiscal year that runs until the end of March this year. So it is very difficult. There is no real mechanism to approve very quickly that amount of money. It will probably take you 6 to 8 weeks to get that done, and then we are in any event almost by the end of the current fiscal year. So it is a conundrum from a procedural point of view for Treasury. And of course, there are reasons for these rules. You don't want every time that a state institution runs into trouble that they go to government for funds. But you are correct. This is such a specific situation where there's so much damage being done to the economy that we need to find some way to get Eskom, even if it's on a temporary basis, to get them funds for diesel.
Just to look back at Treasury's decision-making, and I completely understand what you're saying about the processes and the need for processes in place to prevent, just sort of the handing out of random requests of large sums of money if people, don't invest or use their money correctly. However, this seems to be a national emergency, and whether it's termed that officially by the government or not, I think we're seeing the results, not just in terms of the impact on businesses, the impact on agriculture, but just in terms of social cohesion. We're seeing more and more protests happening, more and more social disruptions. Do you think that it would be reasonable to expect Treasury to acknowledge that and to say, okay, in the face of something, whether it's termed a national disaster or emergency or not, let's recognize it as such and make a plan?
Yes, I think but perhaps this is not Treasury's role on its own. I think given that the crisis is so severe, this needs to come right from the top, from the presidency. In other words, to get all parties together and to find some solution for this. Again, even if it's just for the next 5-6 months while we are in this very deep hole, to just carry us through that. I mean, I certainly think there's a big argument to make for that. And again, the money doesn't necessarily have to come from the Treasury. There may be other means to get Eskom some relief, whether it is loans that they may have to other institutions. We're not talking about defaults here, but just perhaps to postpone the repayments of those loans, for example. So there may be many options that could be put on the table.
The argument has been made that earlier in the week when we were at power cut level 6, those open cycle gas turbines were not being used because of the shortage of funds for diesel. Do you think if they had been used, or if they were used now, there would be considerable relief for the grid?
So what we know is that in total, those turbines add about 2,000 megawatts to the grid. So that's roughly 2 stages of load shedding. So if you can run those turbines continuously, which of course they were not necessarily designed to do, but given the crisis, we have been running them quite hard. So that provides relief of 2 stages of load shedding. So if we were on stage 6, it would be 4. Currently, we are on stage 4. So we would most likely have been on stage 4, on stage 2, if we were able to run those turbines. They can't be run indefinitely. This is an interim. I don't want to call it a solution. It's an interim mitigating factor against very severe stages of load shedding.
The argument from Eskom might be, well, if we've got some interim relief, why don't we use that to reduce load shedding or to mitigate the situation, so that we can then, instead of reducing load shedding, still keep those other units offline so that we can do much needed maintenance. That would once again come down to a lot of pressure on South Africans, on businesses, on farmers, but the argument is there that maintenance is absolutely critical, and without it, we're not going to get to a situation where there is any means of improvement.
I think that's exactly right. So they're doing quite a lot of maintenance currently. About 5,000 megawatts is offline for planned maintenance. But of course, there's lots more than that in terms of unplanned maintenance. But you are right. The one argument may be, but geez, just stop these planned maintenance currently. That will give us a lot of relief, and it will give us relief. But it would be a very bad decision from a medium-term perspective, because it's absolutely essential that the maintenance is done on these aging coal fleets. We know under past leadership of Eskom, the maintenance was not always done sufficiently, and we are now paying the price for that. So we can't repeat the mistakes of the past, even though it's hard as we sit here, because it does take units of the grid. There's no doubt that we need to continue with that.
Talk to us about NERSA's stance on Eskom's diesel budget. They've approved an electricity tariff increase of 18.65%, but they have not granted Eskom an increase in terms of diesel budget for that aspect of operational running. What do you see in that decision? Is that a lack of foresight on the part of NERSA?
Look, there's been lots of concern in recent years. There's been sort of court cases on this in terms of NERSA's rulings. I think in this instance, they are making an argument that Eskom should be running their coal fleet more efficiently, and if they do that, it would not be necessary to run these gas turbines. But again, we are sitting with legacy issues here, and significant legacy issues, and lots of things have happened, right? We had an explosion at one of the key plants. There was a chimney collapse at Kusile, 1 unit last year. That has resulted in 3 units of Kusile being offline. So it's almost and of course, then there's all these concerns about deliberate sabotage at Eskom. So it's a very, it's a difficult argument to make, that they must simply run the plants more efficiently. It's very difficult, seemingly, to do that. And even if they do everything that they should be doing, we still have these problems because of, as I say, lack of maintenance in the past, aging coal fleets, bad design of Medupi and Kusile. And all of these things happened under previous leaderships of Eskom.
One very quick last question. Unfortunately, because of time, I'm going to have to ask you for a yes or no answer. A lot of South Africans are saying, well, we need to protest, we need to take to the streets, we need to shut down South Africa and insist an end to power cuts, to load shedding. Is that possible or feasible?
Protests are going to do nothing to end this crisis, unfortunately.
Well, thank you very much for speaking to us. That was Hugo Pienaar from the Bureau for Economic Research, giving us a sense of the very complex picture at Eskom related not only to tariff increases, to diesel budget, but to power cuts and maintenance overall.